Welcome to Goodbye Apathy, a podcast about what excites us in life, those passions that get us out of bed in the morning and where we find joy. On this episode, I sit down with Brianna Gold to talk about her love of reading and the positive impact that her passion has had on her life. Hey, Brianna.
I'm ready. Hey, Kevin.
Thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on your first episode.
Yeah. I don't know if you're as nervous as I am, but I'm sweating a little bit.
I'm pretty nervous. This is also my first podcast, so
okay.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we'll learn together. Okay, so obviously today we're here to talk about reading. This is a huge passion for you. I've known you for several years, and I know that you're an avid reader. You definitely have read a substantial amount more books than I have. So I'd love to just ask you some questions about why that's important to you, what it means to you, and I might even try to ask for some recommendations because, to be honest, with all the time we have on our hands, I definitely want to get back into reading, and I'm not sure what the right way is to do that. So, is that cool?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So, first question I have for you, do you remember when your love of reading first started?
No, pretty much because I've always been a reader, so
Yeah.
I don't actively remember it.
Sure.
But from what my mom has told me is that my sister and I, so we're twins, you know that, but
Yeah.
others might not. So we started reading before it was probably normal
Okay.
for kids our age to read. So she says like 2.5 or 3 years old, we were already loving to read.
Okay.
So I don't remember it because I just feel like I've always had a book in my hand.
So growing up, this also is going to be a difficult question, but do you remember having a favorite book as a kid or like a series that was like your go-to? Or was it just like burning through any book you could find?
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Okay.
Definitely burning through all the books. I mean, I have vivid memories of sitting in the Pleasanton, California children's section of the library, just like, how many books can I bring home today?
Yeah.
You know, so definitely that. But then I think it depends on childhood era too.
Okay.
So when I was
Yeah.
really little, like I loved the Dr. Seuss. I loved the Berenstain Bears. I don't know if you even remember.
Yeah, of course.
Bears.
Yeah.
But I loved them, and then like Rainbow Fish and Curious George and stuff. And then as I got older, I really liked Nancy Drew. I got into her for a little while.
Cool.
Very classic. You know, I think my mom recommended those because she read them when she was little too.
Yeah.
The Narnia books.
Okay.
And then I read all the American Girl books because, of course, they went with the dolls that I had.
Sure.
So I had to get all those.
Yep.
And then I really loved, I don't know if people even remember these now, but the Dear America Diary series.
Vaguely. Yeah.
So it was probably more for, anyone could read them, but at
Sure.
the time, female children.
Yep.
Because I think all the protagonists were females for the most part. But that was kind of like my start for historical fiction reading. I remember loving those books. So, yeah, I have a lot. There's not just like one from childhood, I'd say. But
No, I get that. That makes sense.
And then, Harry Potter.
I was going to say, I thought maybe she's saving it for later, or maybe she really doesn't like it.
No, Harry Potter for me exceeds childhood.
No,
Harry
I get
Potter was and is and will be. So
Yeah, no, I get that. That makes total sense. Yeah, I was like, it's almost like too confined for that book to say that it was like your favorite childhood book. It's like, what are you talking about? I'd read that today.
Yeah. I mean, so actually, fun fact, my husband, Michael, is reading them for the first time ever during quarantine right now.
You finally got him to read them?
Fire already. Yeah.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Because he knows how important they are to me.
Yeah.
So when he was like, we have all this time, he just found himself like sitting around watching TV. He's like, I think I'll read Harry Potter for you. And yeah.
He's on book 4, so I would hope this is a yes. Does he honestly like them, or is he still just reading it because he knows they're important to you?
No, he really likes them.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's not a big reader.
Yeah.
Like he'll read some like sales books because he's in sales.
Sure.
And kind of leadership stuff.
Yeah.
But not too much fiction. But yeah, he's really liking them right now. And he'll even come in, like I'll be reading somewhere else and he'll come into the room.
Yeah.
He'll be like, this wasn't in the movie. Like, what is happening? What is this? I love this. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Those books are better.
Welcome to everything you've been missing for the last roughly 30 years of your life.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome. I tried to get my family to read them for years. And I just, like, my mom read Sorcerer's Stone with me. Mm-hmm. But mostly because I think the first time I read that, I think it was for class. And so she typically read the books with me in case I needed help with them, but then never went past that, and I don't know. Yeah, they didn't take any interest.
I actually remember how I got into Harry Potter. So my mom would go every week or bi-weekly to go get her nails done. And she always saw the same woman. Okay. And that woman had a sister who was living in the UK at the time. And she knew that me and Kim were really into reading. And so one day when my mom went in to get her nails done, she was like, my sister just told me about this book that came out in the UK. It'll be here in the next year. You should keep an eye out for it for the girls. Yeah. And so as soon as Harry Potter came out, my mom was like, oh, that's the book, she said. And she got it for us. And we had to share our copies.
Sure.
We didn't each have a copy. We had to share.
Sure.
But that was how we got into Harry Potter. So thank you to my mom's nail lady.
Yeah. I remember the first time you guys told me that story. And to be honest, I was secretly jealous because I thought, you guys got more time with the books than I did. Like, you guys were so ahead of the curve, right? Because you got it right. Because it released in the UK first, right? And then you got it right after that. So I don't remember in the timeline when I first read it. Like, I remember we were in 3rd grade, but I don't remember how long after it had come out that, you know what I mean? Well, that's awesome. I hope Michael likes all of them. Wait till he gets to, what's the 5th is the longest, right?
Yes,
isn't it Order
of the Phoenix.
It's like, because I thought it was Goblet of Fire, and then I looked back. I don't know why I was, every time when I go home, I have my original set there. Like, I don't even feel comfortable, like, bringing it here with me because I don't want them to get damaged. And I was just, sometimes I'll just sit and look at them. And I was doing that, and I thought it was Goblet, but I think it's Order of the Phoenix. But anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I wish I could say the same about our first set, but because my sister and I would read them so much when we were little.
They'd fall apart.
I mean, they are destroyed. Yeah, because we would read when we were eating breakfast. We'd read before bed. We'd read in the car. Like, we just took them everywhere.
Didn't you guys say you would take them to the beach with you too?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine were like this prized possession that, like, I wouldn't let my brother touch them. This is probably also why they didn't read them, because I wouldn't let them near my copies. I told them they had to get their own. But, like, they look like the day I bought them, even though I've read them multiple times, because I wouldn't eat with them. I would wash my hands. I would only read them in my room. Like, I was weird about them. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm the opposite. I feel like if your book looks well read, it's well loved.
No, I get that. I get that. Yeah. Are you a page folder?
No.
Okay.
No,
that bothers me. Where they mark the page. I'm like, there's bookmarks for a reason. Like,
No, I have a ton of bookmarks, and people get me bookmarks as gifts all the time. So
you never run out.
Yeah, I have a lot of them. So no, I would never bend the pages of books. That takes it too far.
Yeah.
I feel.
You know what I started using as bookmarks? People would send me postcards from when they would travel, and I never knew what to do with them, but it was super nice because they'd write this really nice note on it. It usually had like a picture of where they went, and I felt bad throwing them out, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm not going to display other people's postcards. I didn't go there, right? So I started using them as bookmarks instead. I'll even keep them in books. Like, after I finish a book, I'll leave it in there, and then I'll go through my shelf and I'll find it like a couple months later, and it's just kind of cool to be able to look back at it.
Oh, I love that. That's such a good idea. I just use, if I don't have a proper bookmark, I just use receipts or torn pieces of paper.
That's what I used to do too. Yeah. I think when I was a kid, I used to literally use garbage. Like, when you'd eat like a granola bar, like, I would just flatten out the wrapper if that's all I had around. Or did you ever eat fruit leather? I don't know why I thought of that. Do you remember that? It was like
Is that a weird name for fruit by the foot? Or
it was like the fancy version. So if you went to like Whole Foods, it was just like a stick of it, and it was flattened out and it came in a package. It looked like an edible bookmark. Anyway, so I wouldn't use the candy itself, but I would use like the wrapper of it. Anyway.
I'm sure I did that way. Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you, we talked about this a little bit, about how I had read Harry Potter for the first time in school. Like it was actually like a required read. What was your take growing up on required reading in school? How did you feel about that?
It's funny because I think it's hard to reflect on school once you're out of it because you're going along with it at the time. You don't even really question it. And
right.
I think for me, because already such a big reader, like summer book lists and book reports, it was so easy.
Okay.
I read so much that most of the time I wasn't too picky. So if you assigned me something to read, I'd say, okay, I'll read this and, write a book report or do a presentation or whatever it was. But I do think it's good that schools have required reading because I know a lot of adults nowadays that it's unfortunate that they say, I'm just not a reader. I don't like to read.
Yeah.
And so I think if you don't require that in school, kids probably would never read. And they wouldn't even have a foundation of reading when they leave high school or college or whatever their last level of education is. So
totally agree.
I think it is good that we require it. I think what you could change, and maybe schools do this now, obviously I'm 12 years post high school graduation, right?
Yeah.
So it's been a little while. But I think they could allow kids to select their own books because I think that's what stalls a lot of people, especially as you get into more advanced reading, is not everybody's at the same reading level.
Right.
And so when you're trying to read Charles Dickens or whatever, and you think it's easy, but someone else is really struggling with it, that's going to put them off from reading. Yeah. And not that you want to tone down education, like you want to push people, but I think it's important to let people choose what they want to read because then it feels more personal and maybe they can pick a topic that they're interested in, like something that introduces them to reading in an easier way. Yeah. Because there were definitely some books that I read in high school that I was like, I do not like this book. Like,
you just get through it.
Yeah, because reading was already a habit for me, so it wasn't hard to finish it. I just was like, this is not for me. I don't like this book. Yeah. But I can't imagine if you also already didn't like to read and then you had to read something that you didn't like on top of that. Yeah. Like to me, that's kind of a roadblock in trying to make people be readers. So
yeah, I kind of felt the same way. I will say, even now, I am still a super slow reader. And I used to think it was just like how I read. I don't know. I thought it was something I couldn't get over. But I figured out that like my mom reads like nobody I've ever met before. You guys are probably on the same level. Like I've never not seen her with a book. And she'll burn through books. Like it takes her like 2 or 3 days, as long as they're not, not that big of a book. And she's so fast. And then I also was super envious because she could sit on the couch while me and my brother are like playing video games or watching a movie, and she could just read in the background and she didn't hear anything else that was going on. So I was always super jealous of that because I was a good reader in the fact that I always comprehended what I read. You know what I mean? It was easy for me to write the paper afterwards. That wasn't my struggle. But it took me so long to read all those books. And I remember there were classes where it was like, read 50 pages tonight. And I'm like that would take me 2 hours to do that. But I found out what I did was like, I'm sure there's a technical term for it, but I read every single word, every single one. And I couldn't skip a word. And if I did, it started getting all jumbled. So I had to go backwards and read again. So whereas my mom was like, there's that technique where you pick out the keywords and you're almost skimming, but it's like a more specific version of that. I couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. I read every single word on the page. And so it took me probably twice as long as my mom to read these books. And so I remember when I was in school, when we would get a required book, it wasn't that I didn't want to read it, but it was like all of a sudden I had to read this many pages. I had to meet this deadline. I had to write this paper based off of this chapter or whatever it was. And so I had to put so much energy and time into that a lot of my personal reading for pleasure went out the window because I just didn't have time for it. You know what I mean? So that was hard for me growing up. So I'm sure with how much you read, you're probably a decently fast reader, right? So like,
yeah, you can say that.
Yeah. So like, I imagine that even if you were reading a book for school, you probably also had a personal book that you had going at the same time. Do you do that? Do you ever read 2 books at once?
I don't.
Okay.
I know there's some people who will literally pick one book up, read a chapter or 2, and then pick
Switch
up
to
another,
another.
read a chapter or 2. I'm not like that. I'm
Okay.
also one of those people, if I start a book, I have to finish it.
Okay. Yep.
Even if I'm hating it,
Okay.
and it's like the most boring thing, or it's moving slower, or like whatever it is, I have to finish it. So I can't remember, honestly, if in high school I did that. I can imagine I did if it was maybe like a really academic book.
Sure.
And then on the side, I like read something a little lighter just to have a read for pleasure type book.
Gotcha.
But I don't specifically remember. Right now, I don't. Like, as
No,
far
I
as
gotcha.
I can remember, I do not read 2 books at a time. No,
Yeah.
I'm very, like, finish this one, move on to the next.
Totally get you. Yep.
Yeah, I was definitely a read ahead,
Okay.
get everything done, and then read whatever else I wanted to kind of person.
Yeah. No, I gotcha. Okay. So would you consider yourself a library or a bookstore person, or is it a combo of the two?
I'm definitely a hardcore supporter of your local library.
Okay.
So I loved spending basically half my childhood in a library, like just such fond memories. And I think they're really good places to keep around.
Yeah.
Because as soon as people don't have access to books, I think that's dangerous just for society in general.
Sure.
So to me, libraries are very, very important. And I definitely go to the library. Plus, I read so much that it just saves me so much money.
I could imagine. Yeah.
So I think my husband would like cut off my credit card if I bought everything that I read. So yeah, I'm definitely a library person, and I go to the local library here, and I love the library that I have where I live now. It's really cute and quaint, and
Cool.
It still has like a really good selection of books. And a lot of library systems now have gone digital and gone online.
Okay.
So you can either get audiobooks if that's your thing,
Sure.
or the library here in our county is a system. So I have a brick and mortar library in my area of the county.
Yep.
But then, they're all over. So online, you can actually order library books, and if they have them at any branch, they will deliver them to your front door.
That's cool.
And then you can return them to your individual. So it's really easy, and you have access to thousands more books than if you just had your physical library near you. So I'm a huge fan of the library.
Yeah.
Even though right now during quarantine they're all closed, so
Sure.
I have been ordering secondhand books off the internet that I will keep. But,
Sure.
Yeah.
I will admit to you right now that I'm pretty sure we have the same library, and
Yes.
I have never been there. So, yeah. So we might have to make a field trip out there.
Yeah.
I should be
And
very
they're all so
ashamed of
nice.
that.
Like everyone who works at this one, like they remember you when you walk in, and
That's
all this
great.
stuff, and they definitely remember you if you have late fees, which not saying I often have them, but
Yeah. You're not talking about yourself.
no.
Okay, so would you say that you like to get book recommendations from other people, or do you like to find books yourself? And I know that's a weird question, but like with me and music, this sounds really snotty. I like to find the music myself. I don't know why. And I'm not saying I don't take recommendations, but there's like this satisfaction of like the hunt, and then you find exactly what you're looking for. Do you know what I mean? So where do you fall on that scale?
I really don't think I have a preference. I just like to discover
Okay.
new good books, you know?
Okay.
So I feel like if somebody loves a book enough to say, like, you have to read this, that will make me read the book. Because if someone has taken the time to tell me that, like, they really love that book, it meant something to them. You know, that's how I feel whenever I have a book that I love and I try and get people to read it. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, this will change your life, kind of thing, you know? Maybe not that extreme.
No, I get it. I get it.
Yeah. And I think especially favorite books can tell a lot about a person. So when Michael and I actually first started dating, he thought it would be fun, which I didn't know if he was a reader or not at the time. Obviously, he led me to believe he was, but he suggested that we exchanged our favorite books. And then we each read the other. It's kind of a funny story. But so I don't have like one favorite book.
Sure.
And a lot of my favorite books, I don't know how to say this, like, might not be for people who aren't readers.
No, I get that.
Right.
Yep.
So I was like, what book do I give him? And he gave me This Is Where I Leave You, which is a really great book. I loved it. I forget the author off the top of my head right now, but just like family oriented, kind of goes into what it means to be a part of a family and those relationships and that kind of thing. And it was a really, really good book. And I felt like, knowing that was Michael's favorite book, I got a little sneak peek into what was important to him.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So I was like, what book do I give him? Before I knew what he was giving me, I was like, okay, I can't give him John Steinbeck, because although he is my favorite author, and his book East of Eden is probably my favorite book of all time, if like you had to have me say one, that would be a lot to give him right away. You know? So,
not knowing what his not reading level, but like passion for it is, right?
Right. I hope he's not mad when he hears that. Love you, honey. You're very intelligent. Yeah, so I was thinking, I was like, what do I give him? And then for some reason, my mind was like, well, I love Stephen King.
Yep.
I'll just give him my favorite Stephen King book. And my favorite Stephen King book is It.
Yep.
And I gave it to him, and he was going on a family vacation to the beach the next week. And apparently he was trying to read It on the beach. And his now brother-in-law was just like, what the heck are you reading, bro? And he was like, I don't know, this girl that I really like gave it to me, so I'm trying to read it. But I don't think he ever finished it. Like, it was too much. And looking back, I'm like, why did I do that? But I always say, like, what I love about It, and this is kind of a little tangent, but is that it's not about a scary clown. It's about finding your family outside of your family. It's about those friendships that become more than just we're friends at school or something. You know, it's that the word that people say now, like family, you know, and I think that's really true. And then the bonds that are created through hard situations and stuff. So most people probably don't see it through that kind of lens, but that's how I saw it. So that was my thought process when giving it to him. And he just loves to tell that story now, because he's like, we exchanged favorite books. Yeah. And she gave me one about a scary clown.
I do remember when he was reading that, and that book is like, what, 600 pages long? It's long, right? Maybe that's an exaggeration.
Which edition,
which version?
Because there's some that are like larger and smaller. But it's somewhere around there.
Yeah, and then not only that,
hefty.
when he was reading that book, because Michael does not like scary movies or anything like that, right? Is he a scary movie fan? Yeah. Right. So when he told me that you asked him to read that book, I immediately thought of Joey reading The Shining and how he had to put it in the freezer. Like that's what I pictured Michael doing, like getting super scared and reading like a chapter and having to put the book in the freezer. Yeah.
Now, we weren't living together at the time, obviously, because we just started dating, so I don't know the state of
Sure,
this freezer.
he could have been, and none of us know.
There.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so to sum up, I love recommendations, but I also love to find books on my own. Like, I will just spend hours in a bookstore at the library, just taking books off the shelf and reading the back of them. And, you know, it's just kind of gut feeling, like, does this book sound like it'll be good to me? And if it does, then, you know, check it out or buy it or whatever. So
Yeah.
a little bit of both. And now I love the Goodreads app. I don't know if you're on Goodreads. But it's basically like virtual bookshelves. You can save stuff like reading now, want to read, or read. And each book will have a page that has reviews from other people and synopsis of the book and things like that. So sometimes I'll just go through Goodreads and find new books and put them on my want to read shelf.
That's awesome.
So yeah, a little bit of both.
So would you say that you have a favorite genre of books, or are you kind of all over the place?
I think I have ones that I lean more toward.
Okay.
But I'm definitely all over the place.
Okay.
So I love fantasy.
Yep.
But then I'm very particular about it.
Okay.
So I don't read a lot of it. I love historical fiction.
Okay.
That's my jam right there. I love historical fiction.
Cool.
But then I also love thrillers. So Stephen King, I've probably read just about everything he's written except for the Dark Tower series because that is such a commitment. But yeah, so I love it all. And then I love just history books too. Like Ron Chernow. I don't know if you know who he is. He's the author of the book Hamilton that inspired the musical Hamilton.
Yep.
I love his historical writing. It's all factual, you know, and you can tell he's done his research and all that, but it just reads so well.
Okay.
And I think I love when history is told like a story, but still as accurately as possible. And I think he does a really good job of that. So like I love reading history too. I'm just kind of all over the place.
Yeah, no, that's good to know because like when I hear somebody say they love to read like nonfiction history, I immediately think of like those really dry textbooks that we had to read in high school and stuff. And it's like, like you said, it's not written like a story, and it's like you're reading like little snippets at a time, and nothing relates to each other, and you have to kind of put it together for yourself. So I should definitely look him up. I've heard of his books before, but it sounds super interesting.
Yeah. They are also, I mean, talk about hefty books.
Okay.
They are very long.
Okay.
Probably 800, 900 range. But he does a lot of really good writing on the presidents or founding fathers. So he's got, obviously, the Hamilton book is really good. And then he has one on George Washington that I love.
Yeah,
my
you told me about that.
is his most recent on Grant, Ulysses S Grant.
Okay.
And I went into it, I'm a big fan of like the Revolutionary War in America and then kind of more recent history. But I've never really gotten into the 19th century, so the 1800s, Civil War, all that kind of stuff. I know about it, obviously, but that's not what I'm drawn to. Okay. And Ulysses S Grant obviously was during and after the Civil War, and so a lot of it when I was reading it was new to me. Yeah. Because history classes, like you talk about, they gloss over so much. Yeah. Just to get to the big details. And I got to the end of it, and I was like obsessed with him. Now I'm a huge Ulysses S Grant fan. Like.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It was such a good book. And Chernow's also written about like titans of industry, like Rockefeller and stuff. So he's so good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got to check him out for sure. Do you ever listen to audiobooks, or are you straight paperback all the way?
Yeah, I do not listen to audiobooks.
Okay.
I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yep.
So I do a lot of listening, but not to audiobooks. There's something about holding a book in your hand.
Yep.
And there are some books, I don't know, this is weird. I think other readers do this too. There are some books where I open them and just the smell, like brings me back to like the first time I read it or where it was in my life or something. So I think there's a nostalgia to it too, actually reading a book. But I think for me, what I do all day working in communications and in our digital world, like I spend so long listening or watching things that to me it's more of an escape to not do that anymore. So to actually hold a book and just have it all be visual, of course, because you're reading and that's a visual act, but not hearing it or watching it. So I will always love to hold a book. But I mean, I think if that's your way of consuming literature, then I think it's better than nothing.
Yeah, sure.
I do think audiobooks remove a little bit of the imagination from it.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, obviously, because you still can't see it. But, you know, Jim Dale does such a great job with the Harry Potter books, but he does all the voices, you know?
Yeah.
And he'll change his accents or inflections and things like that, so it removes a little bit of that, in my opinion. But, I mean, there's nothing wrong with audiobooks, that's for sure. It's just not my cup of tea.
No, I get that. I feel the same way. I mean, this adds another element, right? You have the visuals in, but I kind of feel the same way. If I read a book that I'm just so in love with, page like start to finish, and then they turn it into a movie and I see the movie, I'm not saying I'm disappointed by the movie, but like it feels different. And then like a chapter that I fell in love with the way I pictured it, they change it. And like, it's not that you have to take that as the truth, like that's what it looks like, but it's hard to unsee it. You know what I mean? So then the next time I read it, that's the way I picture it. So I do like, and this goes for audiobooks too, I like the idea of me being able to come up with how the characters sound and being able to, like, you just tell the story from scratch, right? And then being a visual person, I like seeing the words, right? Like, it means a lot more to me. And then the satisfaction of, like, turning that last page and closing the book, you don't get that with an audiobook. You know what I mean? The tape just ends. Like, that's it. Yeah. So I'm with you there. I think it obviously... Okay, so this is weird. And I don't mean anything bad by this. Do you count it as reading? I know that's a weird question, but, like, when somebody told me the other day that they're an avid reader and they're constantly reading new books all the time. And then I find out that it's all audiobooks. And I'm not saying that doesn't count. Like, good for them. That's awesome. Like you said, it's better than nothing. It's just weird to apply the term reading to an audiobook. You know what I mean? Because I just feel like you're not doing as much work. And I don't know. Is that offensive? I don't mean it to be. It's just, it's a weird concept for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely different because when you're reading a physical book, holding it in your hand, you're also looking at the grammar, spelling, punctuation of it, you know, so you're doing two different things, even if one of them is kind of subconsciously. Yep. So, yeah, I don't know if I'd call someone an avid reader if they just consume audiobooks. Right. Because to me, then you can do that also while you're driving or working out. Right. Or doing, like, it would be twofold. Whereas I feel like if you are truly an avid reader, you are a lover of language and words and beautifully crafted sentences and those kind of things that you like to actually read them and understand why they're good, if that makes sense. Yeah. No, I get that. I don't know. That was probably just a horrible explanation, but I feel like you're doing two different things. So if you're driving and you're listening to an audiobook, you're not, like, fully in the act of reading. It feels different. Yeah, and again, I mean, like, nothing towards anyone who likes listening to audiobooks, and I think that as society, well, right now is a bad example, but as society has gotten more busy and crazy and fast-paced, I think audiobooks have been really beneficial because, like you said earlier, it gives people that opportunity that maybe they don't have the time to sit down and read an entire book, but they do have time to listen on their commute to work, right? And like you said, that's still super beneficial and still gets people excited about books. It's just it's just a weird concept to think of all of your books being consumed through audio. You know what I mean? Yeah. But anyway, I digress. I know, right? Okay, so this is a loaded question, but what is it about books that inspire you so much? And I know we've hit on this through some of the other questions, but can you kind of pinpoint, like, what's that feeling that reading a book, like a really good book, gives you that's so satisfying? I think it's just kind of an escape, right? Yep. So, and it's there's a quote that I've heard before. I have no idea who it's attributed to, so like nothing official, but how if you're not a reader, you live one life, but a reader lives 1,000. So I think it's, because you get to create a world, you know, and you're kind of leaving your own and going into somebody else's story, somebody else's head. You're seeing different points of views, learning about people, places, things, you know. So I think just what you can get out of reading is what's inspiring to me about it. Because, you know, we talk about Harry Potter, like I want to go live in Hogwarts. You know, or Lord of the Rings, I want to go live in Middle Earth. Like you become a part of these environments essentially. And for me, when I'm reading, I will tune out the rest of the world. You know, and a lot of times I'll be reading for a couple of hours and look up and then realize I'm hungry or I'm late to something or, you know, like the whole world goes away and I'm in whatever I'm reading. So I think that's what's inspiring about it. And I think readers, people who truly read, expand their own world. Because like I said, you get different perspectives on things. So you are presented with maybe some new ideas that you hadn't thought of before or points of view, which I think is really important. So and then also just what goes into writing a book is inspiring. You know, I've never written a book. I'm a huge reader, but I've never written it. And just thinking about the act of doing that, it costs me, you know? So I think I just have a lot of respect too for writers who devote so much of their life to doing that, to bring those things I already talked about to other people.
Well, I mean, even when you were talking about, like, you mentioned an 800 or 900 page book about Grant, like the amount of research that had to go into that, I can't fathom taking that on. I can't imagine. I don't know how long it normally takes him to write a book, but I'm sure there's a decent amount of time there to make sure that it's accurate, and then also weaving that into a story that's going to be interesting for other people to read. I agree. I have a lot of respect for people who can write books. It seems overwhelming.
And some people just like have that one story inside of them. You know, like Harper Lee is a great example with To Kill a Mockingbird. You know, people say like, why don't you write more? And then turns out she kind of did. You know, her posthumous book that came out a while ago. But you know, she just had that one story in her that she needed to tell the world, and then, you know, that was it. So I just think it's really incredible. I wish I could write, you know, the next great American novel or whatever. But.
Right. Well, it's sometimes too, I like the books that are like, I don't think books always need to be this crazy over the top story that's going to like shock you. You know what I mean? Like, I've told my mom this before, because I said my mom's an avid reader. She's never written anything outside of like what you have to write for school, you know, papers and stuff like that. But when she tells us stories about her growing up, and like she has 8 brothers and sisters, and then like just they didn't have a lot of money growing up, right? So they had to be super creative about everything. But I look at them and they're just like the most supportive and loving people I have ever met. And I just look at them and I think like, you came out of so much adversity and have so much that could have gone wrong, and yet you guys are so positive and close-knit and stuff like that. But anyway, I've always thought that her story, or like their family's collective story, would be a really good book. Because like growing up, she always talked about how she loved having that many siblings because she always had somebody to play with. You know, it was like having a full school classroom at home all the time. And then, you know, there were large age gaps between the youngest and the oldest. So you were like, the youngest kids were almost like brought up by the older kids. You know what I mean? There are different relationships within the same family. Like, you know, we have siblings, but you guys are the same age. And then me and my brother are only 4 years apart. So like, you have a different relationship than if you had 10 or 15 years apart, you know? And then our great aunt lived next door to my grandma, and she had 8 kids. So there were 17 kids between two houses. You know what I mean? And like,
gosh.
I just think that's so crazy, and I love hearing stories from her. So I told her, I was like, if you ever wanted to write this down, I would totally read it. I don't know if other people would, but I think it'd be super interesting just to hear all that stuff. But anyway, I don't know.
I mean, that's one of my favorite quotes of all time is Nora Ephron, everything is copy.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's why she was such a great writer. I don't know if you've ever read anything by her, but she's so great. And all of her writing is just about life.
That's awesome.
Like, it's not these big, huge events or anything catastrophic or these big fantasy worlds or anything, which all of that is great too. But, you know, she just wrote about life. And I think that's why she also wrote movies. So that's where you probably know her from. And You've Got Mail, Sleepless in Seattle, When Harry Met Sally, of course. But yeah, everything is copy. That's just one of my favorite quotes, and it's so true.
Well, and her movies are some of my favorites ever made, just because they're so simple, and they just, like you said, it's just like watching somebody's life, and it just like makes you feel better, and I don't know, like it. Yeah, there's something to that simplicity of it, not trying to overdo it.
A big part of like finding books that mean something to you is somehow relating to it. Yeah, you know. So growing up reading, I mean, I'm going to go back to Harry Potter again. I think for our generation it's so easy, but like I was close to Harry's age as I was reading the books or as the books were coming out. Yeah. So to me it was like, man, I'm in school too, but I wish my school was magic. You know, like there was that relatable points to it and a little bit of escapism. So. Yep.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, that's what I told people, like, that is one of my favorite things about when I was born. The fact that I got to grow up with Harry Potter. Like, I feel bad that other people don't get to experience that. Like, every year, or I don't know how long what was it, like 2 or 3 years between books? Does that sound right?
So I actually just looked this up the other day.
Okay.
The first 4 books came out each year consecutively.
Jeez.
And then after that, it was either 2 or 3 years between every book. I think just because when she was writing the first few books, she was also shopping it around to try and get it published.
Sure.
So she was
there was other work.
Yeah, and then she eventually caught up to publishing dates and stuff. So.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, but like it was so satisfying to read that, and like you said, you even though I can't relate going to a school of witchcraft and wizardry, it was like you related to that age and like you said, just wanting to be a part of that. That was really cool.
Yeah.
No, totally agree. You mentioned that, obviously your background's in communications and writing. Do you feel that your background in reading and your passion for reading has improved your writing skills and what you do for a living?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if like at my age now, so I'll be 30 in July, if it's helping like it did when I was younger. Sure. But yeah, I think in order to continue to be a good writer, you need to be a good reader. Because I started reading very, very young, and I started writing very young. And my mom still has notebooks from when I was, like 5, really little writing stories about my Beanie Babies going on adventures. But they were like full stories, beginning, middle, and end.
That's awesome.
So I think even from a young age, like that really helped me. And going through school, I struggled a lot with like math and science. Yeah. But English and literature classes, I could have done them in my sleep. Yeah. And I think that's all because I was such a big reader from such a young age. Yeah. So I do think it helps immensely. And then I think as you get older, it's good just to keep all that in check. And I think reading is definitely part of that. There's still times when I'll be reading through a book and I'll see a word that I don't know, and I'll have to look it up. Yeah. And I'm like, how have I never heard of this before? What does this mean?
Yeah, there's more out there.
And I'll look it up. Or somebody uses some weird punctuation in a way that I would never use it. And I'm like, that's interesting. And then I'll do some Googling on how do people use the comma and semicolon or whatever it is in different ways, So, but I'm a huge grammar, spelling, and punctuation nerd as is. So that stuff just interests me. But yeah, I think reading always goes hand in hand with writing.
Yep. Okay, so Brianna, what are you reading right now?
So I just finished yesterday a book called The Quest for Merlin.
Okay.
And that was a history book, essentially, about was Merlin a real figure, and if so, who was he?
That's
like
cool.
the sorcerer,
Yeah.
That we all know from like Sword in the Stone and King Arthur and stuff. I don't know if I'd recommend it. It was a lot more academic
Okay.
than
Gotcha.
I thought it would be.
Yep.
So it read like a textbook a lot, but it was interesting. And now I'm rereading Murder on the Orient Express by
Cool.
Agatha Christie, because it's been a little while, and I have in my to be read pile next what is it? I'm just thinking of the Book of Lost Tales 1.
Okay.
So it's more Middle Earth lore that Tolkien wrote.
Okay.
I read the Silmarillion for the third time because it takes a couple of times.
Okay.
A couple weeks ago, and so now I want to like get more into Tolkien
Sure.
lore a little bit. So I'm kind of taking a break
Yeah.
with Agatha Christie in between. Not that she's not great,
Yeah.
but it is a little quicker.
Tolkien's a lot to digest. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. And then we're in quarantine, so I have been a reading fiend, and I just had my second order of books done, so they're coming soon. But,
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So this question's kind of a selfish one, because I'm hoping to use this. So what would you recommend to someone who wants to pick up reading again, but, is kind of finding trouble with the motivation, or, I know that's hard to think about because reading's always been part of your life. But if you think like, what's that one step that somebody can do to start getting back into books?
I think it's very individual.
Okay.
It depends on who you are and what your habits are like. But I do think a big step to get into reading is start with what interests you.
Yep.
So, don't try and pick up Don Quixote and say, I'm going to become a reader.
Yep.
That's a lot. So I think start with where your interest lies. Is it, leadership or professional development? Find a book around that. Or if you're really into sports, find a book about your favorite athlete, or, whatever that is, a hobby of yours, and start there. And then don't try and start with the biggest, thickest book you can find about it. Ease yourself into it. And then I think reading is truly a habit. So I think to get into it, start with, 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, and then wherever that takes you, just go from there.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people assume that to be a reader, they have to sit down and read for hours at a time.
Yeah.
And, that's not true at all. I love to do that. I love to sit down for a couple of hours and read, but I'll also read 10 minutes while I'm eating my breakfast in the morning.
Yeah.
Or I always have a book with me. So if I have to wait for someone somewhere, I'll sit in my car for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I'll use that time to read. Actually, one of the other times when Michael and I were first dating, he was running late to meet me somewhere, and he was profusely apologizing. And I was like, don't apologize. You've just given me some time to read.
Yeah, we're fine.
That's really how I think about it. So, just finding that time, and then even going further than that, if you really need structure, determining what that time is. So are you going to read 30 minutes before bed every night?
Yep.
Or 20 minutes during your lunch break at work, whatever that is, building that structure. And then I think once you get into that, you'll find I don't need structure like that anymore. I can be a little more fluid with it. And then before you know it, you're reading.
No, that makes total sense. Yeah. I, like I said, I was trying to get back into reading recently, and especially with the quarantine, just taking advantage of the extra time. I don't know if I would recommend this to other people, but it worked for me. I picked a book that I had already read that I knew I could burn through really quickly, just so I had a quick win. Do you know what I mean? The satisfaction of finishing a book. But okay, you're going to judge me because this is not my reading level, but this is just...
I was going to say, what did you read?
This is just what... I had it on the shelf already. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I read Matilda, which I know is a children's book. I totally understand. But I knew that I could burn through the chapters really quickly, right? It's a story I love. And I knew that I could finish it quickly so that I can move on to the next one. Like I felt like I needed that stepping stone just to like ease me back into it. And it seemed to help. I don't know. But even like most of this.
That's so cute.
But,
so cute.
Okay, yeah. Should have picked a more manly book. But most of the time when you've been talking, I've been thinking about Matilda, though. Because like when you described reading as a child, do you remember like in the movie where she would walk home with her wheelbarrow full of books that she would get from the library?
Absolutely.
Right? And then like...
I related so hard.
Right? And then I pictured too when she like burns through all the children's books and then she goes up to the librarian and she's like, I'm looking for more books to read. And she's finished that whole entire section of the library. That's what I thought of when you were talking about it before.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
So
that was pretty much me and Kim, my sister.
Yeah.
When we were little. Just, okay, what else you got?
That's
All right.
awesome.
Are we ready to move on to the young adults? I think we are. Okay.
Have you guys ever gotten desperate enough? Like, have you ever been like on vacation or at somebody's house and you'd finished your book and you didn't have anything else to read and you just pick up whatever you could find? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Like, I don't know if you got like desperate enough to like read a cookbook or something weird like that, or like a coffee table book that somebody had out.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, if there's something to read, I will pick it up and read it.
Okay.
It's purely habit. Like I just love to flip through books, I think, And
yeah.
it's funny you say cookbooks, like every cookbook I have read that cookbook.
Okay.
Not maybe the recipes,
yeah,
one line by line,
yeah,
but the other parts of it. Like I have the Magnolia cookbook, obviously, Joanna Gaines, and then I have Reese Witherspoon's, and they all have little stories that go with it, and I made one or two recipes out of both of those.
Yeah.
But I read the whole thing.
Yeah. You almost enjoy the book more than the food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a cook. That is something you should not talk to me about. I love food, as most people do, but I am not a cook. That's for sure. So
I get that. I do the same thing with albums when I get them. Like, especially now that I buy vinyls, I read every line of that thing. Like, you think, when it gives like all of the credit, like the licensing and stuff for each song, like these people wrote the song, this is the person who played the guitar, this person was on drums. I read all of that stuff just because I find it super interesting and I like finding connections between them. But I'm sure I'm like one of the only people. I read their entire thank you note, even if it's like 4 paragraphs of stuff, just because I like to see who they thank. I usually get really mad if it's only like one line. If it's just like, thanks fans. I'm like, well, that's lame. You spent like a year working on this album and that's all you write? I don't know. But I feel like that kind of relates.
Similar with books, I read every dedication and every acknowledgement.
Okay,
too, because I do think it's interesting. And I also love in books how, especially for acknowledgements, you're reading the voice of their characters and their narrative for so long. Yeah. I love to read the acknowledgement and then hear the author. Yeah. And see if it's similar. Yep. So I do the same thing, but with books. And I love to look, this is such a geeky part, but I love to look in the front few pages about when like the initial book was published. Yep. Was there any second editions, and what edition do I have, and what year was it published? I think especially because I buy a lot of secondhand books if I buy them. So I think it's really interesting to read that. So I do the same thing. I weirdly really like seeing who they dedicate the books to. Like, I always thought about that. If I wrote a book, who I would dedicate it to. And I'm sure it depends on where you get the story, right? Like, if you're writing about your relationship with somebody in your life, I think you would dedicate to them. But I always think that's super interesting. I love, for some reason, I love when an author will dedicate it to their kids, like to their family. I think that's really cool. It seems obvious, but not everyone does that. Or if they'll put like why they dedicated it to them, where it's like for your inspiration and kindness or whatever they write. I think that's really cool. Yeah. Yeah. And then what do you do if you're somebody like J.K. Rowling or I don't know, anyone else who's published so many books that you get to like your 10th book, you're like,
you run out of people. Like, this one's for my mailman. Right?
This one's for my cat, who's literally always beside me.
Hey, I'm fully supportive of that. I think, like, if you have enough of those, it kind of, like, paints a small picture of who that person is, right? Like, who the important people are in their lives. I do the same thing with it goes back to the album covers and stuff. But, like, you read that thank you, and you know, like, oh, they thank their wife. They thank their mom and dad. It usually, weirdly enough, it'll tell you if they're religious, because whether they thank God or not in their thank yous. So, like, it does weirdly tell you a lot of them. And a lot of them will get specific where they'll say, like, I want to thank John for his support in the recording studio or whatever. I'm making a crap up. But, like, they'll tell you what that person contributed. I don't know. I know that's kind of cool. But
yeah.
Okay, so last question so we can wrap up. So obviously I started this because I have a deep passion for music. Like, that's my obsession, if anyone asks. I always feel bad for people if they're like, oh, do you go to a lot of concerts? I'm like, do you have 3 hours? Let's talk.
Yeah.
So to bring it back to that, what I wanted to ask you was, do you listen to anything while you read? You know, do you have any background music or anything that you like to kind of put you in the zone if you could have the perfect environment for reading?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can't read if there's a noise happening, if someone's talking, if the TV's on or anything like that. But I do like to put some sort of sound on. So I'll do a movie soundtrack sometimes, low, like not blasting or anything,
yeah,
just low in the background. Or I recently have started using ASMR videos on YouTube. So I forget what that stands for, but it's really popular now,
me too.
You know, and a lot of times it's just one noise. So it might be like a fire, cackling, or rain on the window or something. But on YouTube, I found a lot where people will create environments, for me, especially from literature, and they'll use ASMR sounds to recreate that so you sound like you're in that environment. So like the Gryffindor common room or the Three Broomsticks or Rivendell or something like that, you know, and they combine all those sounds to create one environment, and then I'll put that on in the background.
That's cool.
Just so that it's not silent, because my house, I mean, it's just me and my husband and a cat. So if you sit in a room and there's no noise, there is no noise. Yeah. Like, it is deadly quiet, and it's great at night when you're sleeping, but otherwise it's almost distracting how quiet it is.
Yes.
We're in a pretty quiet neighborhood.
Yeah.
So
no, I get that.
So that's what I listen to when I read. So nothing too crazy. I don't put on music or anything with words, you know, but I like to have a little something.
No, that's cool. That's a good recommendation. Yeah, I'm the same way. I can't do if somebody's talking, if I can hear the TV, because even though I try to like focus, my mind just starts drifting that way. So I totally get that. They always talk about like, I don't know if you ever have like read at a coffee shop or something, if that environment works for you, if it's too distracting. But like that is a space that I work really well in, you know, that noise level and kind of, I can tune it out really easily.
I think it depends.
Okay.
On the coffee shop or the environment. If it's truly like blended noise, and I'm not focused on one particular thing, then I'm okay. Yeah. But as soon as, you know, somebody sits down beside you and they start talking about something and it's either like really gossipy or just like, what is happening? And you slowly start listening to their conversation more. You're not trying to eavesdrop, but it just happens in those environments. Then I'll find myself like, I've been staring at the same page for 10 minutes. I'm just fascinated by this person's life that I don't even know. So I don't do that too often. Plus I am a true introvert, and I love to be alone. Okay. Yep. Especially when I read. So I don't like to go sit and feel like there's people watching me. I know people aren't that interested in me.
No, I get that. Yeah.
Individualistic or narcissistic, but just that sense of that people can see. You know, I like to be truly alone. So.
Nope, that makes total sense. I gotcha. Well, Brianna, this was awesome. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for taking the time to
Kevin,
talk with me. Yes.
I have a question for you.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
What is your favorite book?
Oh, geez. Okay, so outside of Harry Potter,
Yes.
I talked about this a little bit. When I was a kid, the entire Roald Dahl collection, like, he was my go-to author. I think because, like you, I really, really love fantasy books, and I just felt like the way he told his stories just really related to me. I was obsessed with the BFG. I don't know if you've ever read that book. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
A classic.
yes, I think the first time I read it, I don't remember how old I was. I'd be guessing, but I remember I reread that thing like 5 or 6 times that year. Like it just like as soon as I finished, I would just flip it to the first page and start all over again. And I will admit that was one of the books that went through like a lot of wear and tear on my shelf. It's like all crinkled. I think I spilled tea on it multiple times. It's just like disheveled. That was a really good one. I'm trying to think. It's just been such a long time since I've finished a book, which is so embarrassing. I love the idea of reading, and I love the feeling of sitting down to read a book. It's so calming and relaxing, and then to finish a book, the satisfaction of that. But it's been such a long time since I've finished one. I usually get like a quarter of the way in and then get busy with other stuff and don't go back to it, which is terrible.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think if there's one recently.
That's okay. I'll just tell everyone it's Matilda.
Sure. The last book I can remember being like completely obsessed with was Catching Fire, Hunger Games series.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember I didn't know anything about the series, and then it was when the first movie came out. My friend wanted to go see it, and I thought the movie was so cool. Like, I thought the concept was so interesting. So I went out the next day and I bought like the box set of all 3 books. Mm-hmm. And I read the first one pretty quickly, but I had just seen the movie. And like that is one where like the book and movie are almost exactly the same, where like almost the dialogue is almost identical. So it seemed a little repetitive. But then when I got to Catching Fire, have you read that book before? Have you read that series?
I read all of them.
Okay.
It's been a while. I remember enjoying them. I don't think I became like a big fan or anything.
Sure. No, I gotcha.
But, yeah.
That book specifically, I remember I'm one of those people where I like to stop reading at the end of a chapter, or like at a part that makes sense to stop. You know what I mean? I can't just close a book. I have to like feel like I wrapped up something a little bit. So, but that book, every single chapter ended in like a giant cliffhanger, every single one of it. And it was awesome, but I also got frustrated because then I'd have to read another one. So I read that book in a matter of like 2 days, which is probably the fastest I've ever read a book, and is probably not impressive to you. But like, I remember like when I was at work, like I got to work early. It was during my college program. So I got to work early and purposely would just sit in the break room and read for like an hour before my shift started. And then my lunch break, I didn't want to talk to anyone. Like, people would try to sit down with me. I was like, no, I'm sorry. I just want 30 minutes to read. I gotta do this. And then like I'd read on the bus because I didn't have a car. So I'd ride the bus back and forth to work. And I'd read the whole time I was on the bus, and I got annoyed if people were trying to talk to me there. And then I'd stay up till like 2 a.m. every night. I don't know what it was. I was just like, I don't know. Yeah.
Action packed.
Yeah.
I mean, it moves pretty quick. Yeah, I remember enjoying those books too. I couldn't tell you much about them now. Like, I don't remember. College was so long ago. Can you believe that?
I know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dedicate myself to this. We're going to revisit this conversation like a couple months from now. And then I'm hoping to have some updated books for you so that I'm not admitting that Matilda is one of my favorite books. I will have some more adult books on the list there.
What I could do, I can always send you recommendations depending on, what you want to read or how much you want to challenge yourself.
I will definitely take recommendations. I do have a decent amount of books that I really want to get through. I think I told you about this one at one point. It's called The Last Days of Night, and I forget who the author is right now, but it's about the race to provide electricity to the United States. So it's told from the perspective of Westinghouse's lawyer, and how he has to go back and forth between Westinghouse and Edison. And it was another one of those books where I got like halfway through, which sounds terrible. I didn't get bored. I thought it was awesome. It's just like I'm making excuses, but got busy with other stuff and got too far away from it to where I felt like I needed to start over.
Yeah.
But like that stuff super interests me, like that era.
Yes.
So I think that's going to be my next one. That's going to be my step up from Matilda.
Yeah, text me that information. That sounds really good, actually.
I will. Well, and actually, hopefully this is still the case, but they're supposed to make a movie about it. And Eddie Redmayne is going to be the lead.
Okay, I'm in.
Yeah, so I'll send you the info for it. That's my next book. I actually I don't know if you've ever done this before. I really want to join a book club because I feel like that would motivate me enough and like keep me on a schedule. So I've even thought about like starting my own, but I'm such a slow reader that I'm afraid that I won't be able to keep up with people. You know what I mean? So I go back and forth.
I've kind of been a part of book clubs periodically, and they never seem to last long. Yeah. Because people like can't fully commit to it.
Yeah, I get
like
that.
They get busy, they miss a month, and then they just drop off. So but I am fully for it as long as people are like, yes, we will do this and we will do it consistently for at least a little while. So
I think probably where I'd have to start to get back into it is I'll read a book that you have read already, or maybe we'll start them at the same time. You're going to finish weeks before me, but that's okay. At least then I know I have somebody to talk to about it. You know what I mean? Even if we're not reading alongside each other, because I know I would drive you crazy at how slow I read it. But at least then I know it's like watching a movie and then not having anyone to talk to about it. So at least if I knew somebody, I was like, okay, I'm done. Let's do it. Let's talk about this. So I could at least start there. Well, Brianna, this was awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. Yeah, and we're definitely going to feature you on a future episode. This was awesome. We probably had too much to talk about.
It's so exciting.
Okay.
I'm excited for you.
Thanks. I'm gonna sign off here, and I'm gonna go pick up a book. That's what I'm gonna do.
Awesome. Happy reading. Readers are leaders.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, follow Goodbye Apathy on Instagram to stay connected and up to date on the latest episodes. If you're looking for more inspiration, check out our Spotify account to access the music discussed on this show. If you have a passion to share, head over to goodbyeapathypodcast.com and send us a quick note. You could be featured on a future episode.